So it's not the first time that police management has been shrouded in controversy. In fact, at least two former National Police Commissioners have faced criminal charges. Scara Mafokoane joining me now in studio for an in-depth discussion on these developments and some. Then, Scara, to even have the police associated, politicians associated with criminal activity, I mean, it creates grave concern, one would definitely have to think. What are the anticipations here that you've heard and that you've seen?
True. I mean, to be shrouded in such controversy, nobody wants to be President Ramaphosa today, at least. You know, the sentiments on the street. You remember, President Ramaphosa needs to balance a lot of things. There are political parties on the one side, it's his cabinet, it's himself, but there's also public opinion in the fourth. I mean, it's been a week since that those damning allegations by Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. And every day you watch the news, Mkhwanazi is on the news. So it's a story that was never going to go anywhere. But you're right, you know, it's not the first time that South Africa finds itself somehow in such a situation. You know, remember Jackie Silebi, remember Homotso Patlane, whose court case is still ongoing in the courts right now. Arnold Lamour in the Western Cape, the former Western Cape Police Commissioner. Richard Mdluli, the former Crime Intelligence General. So we find ourselves in this quagmire, and South Africans tonight, from the sentiments at least that we're hearing, they just want a police force that works for them, that can be shrouded by any of this, you know, corridor talks along the police force. You know, I had an interesting conversation with one criminal and policing expert. Perhaps let's just take a listen to what he has to say in terms of police involvement, in terms of, you know, crime syndicates in the underworld. Let's take a listen.
You have the two main characters here. There are others on the side. But you have General Mkhwanazi, who now made this expose, and you have the Minister of Police, Mr. Mchunu. Now, the only one of the two who stands accused of criminal or connections with the criminal underworld is the Minister. So I would say, you know, that at least for as long as it takes to properly investigate all of these allegations, the Minister should be at least temporarily removed from his position to allow for an objective investigation. And they can, you know, put certain precautions on General Mkhwanazi, but if they decide to also suspend General Mkhwanazi, it will send all the wrong signals. It will tell the rest of South Africa that this thing will be swept under the carpet.
Well, so that sentiment then is very interesting, because if you get a suspension for Senzo Mchunu, Deputy Police Minister then takes over then, of course, and you hope you'll have what should be a sort of free investigation of sorts. South Africans don't want don't want another investigation, don't want another commission of inquiry, surely. They just want a whole lot of action at this point. And it's going to go to the issue of governance for the police.
Absolutely. And like I said, nobody, I don't think, today wants to be President Ramaphosa. Governance, what we spoke about earlier, it speaks exactly to the governance, or at least of the policing force. And I remember having a conversation with a gentleman on Friday. They had a candlelight vigil at one of the police stations in support of General Mkhwanazi. Okay. You know, they it was across the country, at least, was here in Gauteng and in Durban as well. And they're generally saying, and that's their sentiment, it's civic organizations. They're saying the president has to be clear. The public sentiment in terms of police and policing, it's at its all-time low. Remember, the crime index put South Africa at least the top 5 criminally riddled countries in the world. So the president has to come out and be decisive, but also whatever decision that he makes, make sure that the public sentiment or the public confidence in police is somehow, you know, resuscitated, if I can use such a word. But it speaks to the governance. It speaks to who sits at the top of those decision-making in terms of the police. Let's just take a listen to one governance expert on what he has to say in terms of governance within the policing space.
And our police minister must be clean. There must not be a blemish on their names. And when this came to light, obviously your first inclination was, let's give the minister the benefit of the doubt. But when it became clear that the minister lied to Parliament, lied in terms of who he knew, who he had contact with, it became clear that there is something amiss.
There's a question here as to whether or not we're just looking at rotten apples versus, a few bad apples in the system. The problem is that this appears to be systemic, which means it's not only about cleaning out the people who there, if they're only replaced by other rotten apples, because the way in which the system is structured is that this is very important to protecting politically connected people from accountability. So the question is whether even if they're replaced at the moment, are they going to be replaced with people who are actually going to do their job? So there's a problem with the appointment process of senior people at commissioner level within the police service, as well as the ministers themselves and the exercise of their powers. And it appears as though what this case indicates is that people who are criminals are basically working together with the top end of the police structure and for immunity. So yes, they need to be replaced, they need to be put to the side, and we need a proper, transparent, independent structure leading the police force.
Okay, so we've listened to two there. That's very welcome. So there's messaging as well from political parties, precisely the Democratic Alliance, of course, being the key opposition or the key second member in the Government of National Unity. But at the same time, the governance experts speaking about how it really speaks to how the responsibility of who we hire and how we hire people is actually very critical and important here too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So all that will rest on what the president is going to say come 7 o'clock RIB. But I can tell you now, there are experts which throughout the day, ahead of President Ramaphosa's address, we will be speaking to. But the sentiment you're already getting is that can we, somehow work on the top structure of the police that it gives confidence to the public. I like what the viewer question that we put out this morning on the expectations from the president. Is he going to fire Mr. Mchunu or Minister Mchunu? What is the public sentiment about it? Is it just a talk shop? So I don't think at this point, or rather the president has a very, very tough decision to make, and everybody is looking at what President Ramaphosa will say. But whatever he says tonight has to be so decisive, at least to win back the trust of South Africans in terms of policing.
Scara, thank you so much for catching up on this story for us. It's certainly going to be a busy day.